All right, aloha everyone. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Mr. Drinkwater, and I am the English department's resident maniac. I've taught basically every English course we offer, and I currently teach AP language. I teach sophomores, and I teach dark days. So, Mr. Barris invited me to do a little bit of ranting and raving about the Western, because it's my understanding that you guys are about to explore the Western as a genre in cinema. And if any of you have met me, you know I have a lot of thoughts and opinions on everything or anything pop culture related. And although I'm not, an expert in the way that Mr. Barris is when it comes to film, I'm a movie nerd, so I've got plenty of opinions. So when it comes to the Western, you guys are about to embark on what is just an absolute classic genre of movies, of cinema. I don't think one can really explore the history of movie making, especially Hollywood or American movie making, and global movie making, without exploring the Western. And all of you, whether or not you know it, are already sort of familiar with the Western because it has infiltrated pop culture well beyond its initial genre classification or its initial installments. But when we typically think of the Western, we think of the Wild West. We think of the American frontier. We think of the pioneer life. We think of mountains and desert and wilderness in roughly like Civil War era America. Sometimes it's pre-Civil War, sometimes it's the Civil War proper, sometimes it's post-bellum, it is after the Civil War, and it can go right up through, when we think of the classic Western, right up through the beginning of the 20th century. And there's a lot of kind of classic conflicts that we think of, in the big picture we think of civilization versus wilderness. So we've always got like the Wild West frontier town, and they're right on the outskirts. We have some classic sort of conflicts between the Americans who are living on the frontier and Mexicans who are living on the frontier, and indigenous people, Native Americans who are living. There's also all sorts of conflicts between like law and order, and also, what does it mean to have law and order when you're just establishing townships? And beyond that, notions of a law sometimes coming in conflict with notions of honor, right? And so, just to boil it down to be super reductive, we think of, bank robberies and saloons and, cowboys versus Indians, in quotes, as some of the staples of the genre. And we have a lot of classic character types, right? So there's always, as I just said, the cowboys and the Native Americans. There are the lawmen, right? The sheriffs and the deputies. Sometimes they're on the up and up. Sometimes they're corrupt. We've got farmers and families who are often depicted as being more vulnerable. We've got the bartenders working in the saloons. We've got outlaws and criminals and gunslingers. We've got tycoons and politicians trying to exploit the land and exploit the townships. We've got prostitutes, we've got loners, we've got drifters, and all of these I think are at play. But something that I want to rant about a little bit in terms of why I am drawn to Westerns is the notion of archetypes. And I don't know if you've gone over this in class too much, but archetypes are basically recurring story elements or recurring character types that pop up time and time again throughout history, throughout human civilization. No matter what society you're from, no matter what era you're living in, your stories will have certain common elements. And this popularized this idea, a book called A Hero with a Thousand Faces, which was put out by Joseph Campbell. And just for an example of an archetype, everyone knows the archetype of what is called the wise old man. This is a character that appears in countless stories where they are a figure that the protagonist knows. This wise old man figure usually has some access to knowledge that is beyond the protagonist's purview. It is often otherworldly knowledge. It often helps the protagonist gain skills and abilities that most people don't have access to. and they serve as sort of an aid along the way. They help our protagonists not only gain these skills, but embark upon a mission. This is usually referred to in archetypal terms as the hero's journey. So, for example, my favorite wise old man is from the OT, the classic Star Wars trilogy, and it's Ben Kenobi, right? He's sort of the hermit who lives at the edge of town. Luke meets him. He shows him what a lightsaber is all about. He teaches him about the Force. He sets him He sets him up on his missions. He gives him knowledge and skill, and he ends up dying. Spoiler alert! But then he sort of comes back and helps, right? Same idea with Harry Potter, right? Dumbledore sets Harry on the same sort of mission. You could even say Karate Kid, Mr. Miyagi, does sort of the same thing for Daniel, and you can think of countless examples. With the Western, I think the most palpable archetype we see, and we see a lot of them, but the one that really stands out to me that we as a culture have really glommed onto is the notion of the anti-hero. And this is a character who we see them existing sort of outside of the law. They're not friends with the sheriffs or the deputies. They're not friends with judges. But they do have a code of ethics. They do have a code of honor. And they're usually willing to help those who are in vulnerable positions, right? So we see a lot of times, sometimes they can be bank robbers, sometimes they can be bandits, but sometimes they'll just sort of appear to not have any vocation, but they come into town, they are there to look out for themselves, but they end up getting roped into helping those who are more vulnerable. And we see this throughout all sorts of stories that aren't typically thought of as Westerns. So, for example, I think the greatest or maybe most pressing, I don't really know what I'm trying to say in terms of how we can frame it, but maybe most popular recent example of the outlaw would be The Mandalorian, right? It's a Star Wars TV show. The Mandalorian is absolutely a Western set in outer space, right? Mando is a bounty hunter. He's sort of a hitman, but he ends up finding Baby Yoda, and because he has a code of ethics, because he has a moral compass that we can glom onto as the viewers, he is not going to kill Baby Yoda, right? We riot if anything happens to Baby Yoda, and that's how the Mandalorian feels. Another recent example of a Western sort of in disguise would be Breaking Bad. Super popular TV show. If you've never watched it, I say absolutely watch it at some point. But Walter White, he is a criminal for sure. He is absolutely not on the side of the law. And I would argue that by the end of the show, he's not even an anti-hero. He's just a straight-up villain. But his partner Jesse sort of remains the anti-hero throughout. Nevertheless, I'm ranting, I'm raving. The point being that we really love this archetypal anti-hero. Think of Logan, right? If you ever watched the X-Men movies, or specifically the movie Logan, he is 200% an anti-hero, and the Western gives us that for sure. There are plenty of other examples of Westerns popping up in pop culture. Sometimes they are Westerns presented as Westerns. So, I don't know exactly which movie you're going to watch. If I'm not mistaken, I think you might be watching Once Upon a Time in the West, which is a fantastic Western. It's directed by Sergio Leone, and it's coming on the tail of his Man with No Name trilogy. So everyone sort of knows and sees a fistful of dollars for a few dollars more, and the good, the bad, and the ugly, specifically, all starring Clint Eastwood. But Once Upon a Time in the West came after those, and it's sort of a secret gem. It's not secret. You don't have to break into any vaults to see it. You don't have to become an anti-hero to see it. But I do think it is underrepresented and underserved. So that's what I'm offering up to you. I am a English teacher dweeb who often gets the reputation of just being mega down with sci-fi and horror, and it's true, I love those genres, but the Western does present a lot of really, really righteous stuff, and it has infiltrated, again, sort of every corner of pop culture. So whether or not you know that you have seen a Western, you very likely have. I'll say if you enjoy Once Upon a Time in the West, which I believe is what you're watching, go back, watch the other Sergio Leone movies, and then explore all different sorts of Westerns. I'll say if you're feeling like you need some levity, Back to the Future 3 is in fact a Western. So you can hop in your DeLorean and travel back to 1885. All right, I hope that you enjoy the Westerns that you're going to see, and I appreciate your time listening to me rant and rave at you, because Mr. Barris said I could. And who am I to turn down the opportunity to rant at the youth? All right, peace.